All right, the metrics. I I don't know. I've had it not beaten to my head, but I adopted and aligned early on with the idea of leading indicators, things that you can control, things that you can move, uh, eventually impacting the desired lagging results. And and being okay with focusing on what is in control and the metrics related to that, and having confidence that it will play out in whatever way it's going to play out and result in the revenue that I'm looking for. The the importance of leading and lagging indicators allows for connection to be made over time. If you adhere to a set of prospecting and sales stages consistently, you develop more and more confidence in the probability that it advances between stages, which means that you can communicate confidently to a prospective salesperson that you're trying to hire, or a prospective investor or an advisor. So that confidence that you get in communicating and be able to make decisions, hiring great people, stems from adhering consistently to the definition of stages and then the metrics that you're able to get out of that. You're also then able to coach individuals in their weaker areas. If you have multiple people, imagining a future state, I'm just painting a picture of future state, you're able to then help individuals, A, B, C, D individual, in their weaker area, because you know how each person relative to each other is performing in those stages. You might know different industries that are progressing at a lower rate, meaning the velocity is lower than the others. So you're not going to spend your resources, your capital, your time in those areas. This is an example of think about leading and lagging indicators. On the left, we all know this, right? It's very topical. The use of the adherence to or adoption of distancing. It all is indicative. It all drives together. There are a handful of other things, right? Leading indicator blood type is indicative of the ability to. There are so many things that are not included, but the importance here is conceptually, leading indicators drive lagging results. Now, on a perhaps a better note, we can talk about sales. So here are some leading indicators and dependent variables that you want to track. And I'm referencing on the bottom right still this example that'll persist through. The things on the left, they're daily things that you want to be mindful of, and weekly things you might want to be mindful of. I don't know your businesses and your time availability, but I would urge you to spend time each day prospecting versus contemplating that you would spend a larger time on one particular day. Beating a regular drum beat for a number of new prospects that you're adding into the top of the funnel is going to be helpful. I wouldn't over-index on the number of engaged or number of ops created on a daily basis. I think that's too focused. But on a weekly basis, it's important, right? There's also fewer of them, right? So you don't want to get too wrapped around the proverbial axle if you look at things on a daily basis. And there are other things that you're going to want to be mindful of as you track them inside of your CRM. So if you track your farm type, right, or geography, whatever those variables are, if you have your name, if your create data is there, all the CRMs out of the box should have the ability to modify, introduce fields, and track all this information. The metrics that you're going to get, the optionality of slicing this information is just, it's going to be exactly what you need if you are looking at this here. There's a couple other things that might be interesting if you have the ability to track, although you're not going to put them in a board slide or an investor deck, but the types of objections you get. Now, this becomes a lot easier if you introduce a sales automation tool, and we'll talk about the sales stack later on and a couple tools that you can introduce, and a lot of them have this out of the box. But the objection type you're getting is going to help in terms of an effectiveness of your efforts, right? As you talk internally or contemplate with yourself or work with a mentor or advisor on the sales side, whatever it is, being able to track the objections you're getting or the types of email responses is going to be important. The type of objection is important when it comes to that effectiveness of you in the earlier stage of prospecting. And if I might be so bold as to say this, if you're not an experienced salesperson, you probably aren't great at that particular area, which means that if you're mindful that it's one of the areas that you can improve the most, which is the case, because it's not your strength, if you're mindful of that and you track these objections, and they can come in the sense of call recordings, you can get much better at it. So while number of new prospects is important on a daily basis, number of engaged and ops created, all the other things help from a metrics perspective, and examples we'll show right after this. From an improvement of effectiveness, track your objections, whether it's in recorded calls or in tagging calls or tagging something with objections, somehow pulling them out where you can review them with yourself or with someone else on the team to help get better. This, I'm going to show you a couple of charts of what you might get over time, right? This is not what you're going to get initially, but you can see of different industries that you could serve, some have a higher velocity, meaning their relative height in this chart. You can see how some have higher velocities. That would allow you to stop spending time over, imagine yourself a year, 2 years down the road, stop spending time in industries, or at least seriously question the value of spending time in some industries. Unless it's strategic in nature, you might devalue and deprioritize that. Same thing goes with geography. Whatever the way you want to slice it, imagine one of these says number of trees. By rep, if you've got more reps, all of these allow themselves, and I'm just seeding an idea for you to understand the value that it's going to happen 2-3 years down the road. And I know you've got other things to worry about now, but this has value down the road if you can do it now. And then from a performance and helping individuals, you're able to see each person in each one of their stages and how they perform relative to each other. And this all comes back, if I can toggle through these too much, it all comes down to tracking this. That's it. Creating what those firmographic market segments that you want are, tracking these other things on the top right, tracking the things on the left, and then you can get all the other information that we've just shown, which is utilizing time and resources in the right market segments and helping each individual perform better. So the sales stack, I've been, and perhaps some of you have been in organizations where there's large organizations and very small organizations. And as you just contemplate progressions and evolutions, there's an availability of cash and capital to pay for tools. There's a need component. Do you need it or not need it? Meaning the value to the business impact. There's an ability, there's an organization's understanding of the tools that are available and availability of time to implement something. So it can get quite noisy, and we're going to usher you through to a recommended stack and talk about how it creates leverage for you if you want. And this probably would be part of a session outside of it. There are questions you can contemplate if you don't want to go with the particular sales stack that's recommended, that you can answer that would inform deviations or changes in your sales stack. And in the worksheet that you have, there are examples of a typical inbound and outbound. Most people are outbound, but there's an example of inbound and outbound. This is one of the common market landscape maps you might see. I see them perhaps because I spend more time in quote unquote sales operations. There's tools out there. There's hundreds and hundreds of tools. It can be confusing. And a lot of these things, if you're getting hit up by vendors that are trying to sell product to you because you might have some validation on Product Hunt, or your name gets promoted in some way, and then all of a sudden you've got a seed round or something, and you're just getting these these inbound leads on LinkedIn, or not inbound leads, but inbound requests on LinkedIn or whatever. There's only a handful that are important to you in this early stage, and they almost all tend to focus on this prospecting area because you're not at a point where you need volume. You need tools to help with processing of proposals and demonstrations. These are some of the questions you might ask. We're not going to ask them today because they're probably not important for you, but I wanted you to see that what will guide you will come from how large do you think you're going to be in 12 to 24 months in terms of number of people interacting with customers, or number of customers, or number of transactions, or the amount of data that your product might need to feed back into your CRM. There are questions, and there are more questions inside of the worksheet that you can answer. This tends to be a case-by-case basis. It's not a one, I haven't built yet the answer to your question and what the derivative stack is going to be, but I will show you a combination of tools that I recommend to probably 95% of the people that attend. And this is what the stack tends to look like. There needs to be a CRM, and largely you can choose HubSpot, Freshworks, or Pipedrive. I don't really care. They all have the base needs that you need. The other thing that you might contemplate is Salesforce. You start to get into a cost benefit. Do I need Salesforce? Is it too robust? Probably for the large majority of you, you don't need Salesforce at this point. When you are getting to the point where you might have 4 or more salespeople, you would need to contemplate the stack and again. But for those who might stay in a period of time for 2 years, 3 years, where they have less than 3 salespeople, HubSpot, Freshworks, or Pipedrive are all great. Sales automation tool. This is a tool that allows you to create leverage and reach more people more consistently. So you can introduce a cadence or a sequence. So imagine over time, you might have 3 different roles that you're trying to communicate within a prospect, but each of those gets a different cadence, meaning a different number of touches, and whether or not you're communicating via LinkedIn or email or phone, or all of the sales automation tools listed here can prescribe and keep you on track so you don't have to mentally remember who you're speaking to next. They're basically generating a task list for you. It can do A/B messaging on subject lines. It can do A/B messaging in the body of the content. And in having one of these, you're able to introduce a virtual assistant to take a lot of the tasks that are repetitive, that aren't high value for you to do. And you can use sales automation as a way to define what that cadence is and introduce a virtual assistant. 2 other probable tools that you're going to want to use. One, the LinkedIn Sales Navigator extends the medium and channel in which you could reach someone. So if LinkedIn is a place where your prospects are residing, which not everyone, but it's largely the case, LinkedIn Sales Navigator gets you access to them in another way. And then data sources to help find contact information, whether it's phone or email. Lucia, Rocket Reach are both suitable. When you think about packaging this all together, inclusive of a virtual assistant, which can do a lot of the list building and repeatable tasks, you might be talking about $300 per person per month. If you introduce Salesforce and Outreach, then it moves up. But keep in mind that this estimated cost, you're going to get your contact data. You're going to have a virtual assistant building the lists for you. You're going to have that virtual assistant probably introducing those lists into a cadence you've defined. They might be sending the messages from you inside of LinkedIn Sales Navigator on your behalf, and everything's going to be inside your CRM. So I would strongly urge you to contemplate, if you can, the value of $300 plus or minus in creating leverage for yourself and having more opportunities to discuss the product and the pain that you solve.